Hello, Chumbags. Welcome to the HQ. My name is Nick Sivak, and I'm joined by Kandula.
Is this you revealing my secret that I put on a fake voice every time we start a podcast? Wow.
Yes, wow. And you are listening to the Respawn Station podcast.
Yes, dude. That's what I'm talking about. See, it makes you feel like you're honestly, if I was going for the vibes of a podcast, it would be like a radio show in the post-apocalypse. Just people are like, all right, I'm tired of listening to the ink spots. Let me switch over to see what's happening, and then it's like, Nick and Sri are on, and Nick is talking just like he always does.
Got a couple screws loose, so
hey, it's Nick. Welcome back. Oh man, Nick. Wow, we're already making Bethesda references, and we haven't even gotten to the main topic of this show.
Yeah, just like you mentioned, big day today. That long rumored / leaked Oblivion remaster is real, and you can play it today. Neither of us have played it though. Yeah. So.
No, guys, I was wrong. Last week I said that this was not real, but it turns out it is real, and it's out. We'll talk about it a little bit more later.
Yeah, like you said, we'll talk about that later. But before we get to all of that business, Sri, got a very important question to ask you. What have you been playing this week?
I have not been playing a whole lot, but I'll briefly touch on the things I have been playing because, one thing we'll talk about later as well. But I've been playing more Warzone consistently, just because it's the easiest game for me to not have to analyze, or like I'm not like studying it. I'm just like, all right, dropping into the see where it goes. Mm-hmm. And I really. And I don't really think that I was a big Verdansk guy. Like, I'm not like, going back to OG Fortnite again and being like, I remember when I was a kid, It's not quite the same. But it is interesting because I'm back into, I'm just using Verdansk as an excuse, essentially, to go back into Warzone. And what I find is that there's parts of this game that are, like, really good. And it's late game. When you're in the last, 30 people left, and the map is getting closer, there's this intensity that kicks in that, like, I don't know, I feel like I haven't really played much Apex, and Fortnite isn't quite the same because it doesn't quite, and I think it also has to do with the way that, and I've always said this, the Call of Duty production value comes in where like the music starts getting a little bit more like cinematic, and you're like, these gunfights are like, they start like value, like, they're like really meaningful gunfights because it's like, okay, where's the communication? How are we going to tackle this? Sure. We got to call out who's where, and one of the things that like sucked before is because like I'm a very casual Warzone player. I'm not playing like I used to where I'm going for the top gameplay, and so regular Warzone, I often don't make it to top 30 consistently. I'm good enough to where I'll get to like top 20s, enough. But it's not often. So with this new Warzone, they have a Battle Royale casual, which is essentially it's a bunch of casual players. It still has kind of, I guess, the skill-based matchmaking, whatever they're using. But then, to fill out the servers, it'll have a few bots in there as well. And so it's 150 still, or 150 that drop in.
I was going to ask if that was what the number was. I vaguely remembered that, but I couldn't remember if that was like an increase from the original Warzone or whatnot.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it could have been. I feel like Battle Royale usually is 100, but yeah, 150 in this one, and it is a big map too. So I guess you don't really feel that it's ever really crowded unless you're constantly dropping into hot zones. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, and casual. I've consistently been able to get like top 10. The other, like, we played this weekend, and Alexa and I literally just hopped on for like 2 matches, and we got back-to-back wins, and I was like, oh, like it was just like it was a great experience. And also, part of it is also this idea of like I'm playing and I'm like, I wonder if that's a bot. That guy was too easy. I wonder if that's a bot.
Sure.
But by the end of it, again, like when you're getting to the last 10 people, and everything's intense, and the game has mics, hot mics. So like you'll hear people going, "There's someone in there. There's someone in there." You bring them down, and it's like, "Oh man," it's like you get that real, like, okay, that one was a real person that I was fighting against. But no, yeah. Warzone's been my big thing. And And then also, there's a game called Crashlands 2. Now, I didn't talk about this last week because, frankly, I started it last week and I don't think I was giving it enough kind of attention. I played it for like an hour and a little bit, and I was like, I don't feel like I can really judge this yet. And then so I restarted it this week with less kind of pressure, tension. And first of all, the game Crashlands 2 is a sequel to a game that I hadn't played, but it's an open world. I don't want to. There's like kind of isometric. The camera is like kind of above the character looking down at an angle. I think that's isometric, right? I think that's how they're
Yeah.
described. And it's this colorful open world indie crafting game. And it's not like Minecraft. I know this is, obviously Minecraft's back at the top, so that's what everyone's gonna be talking about. But
Chicken
no,
jockey.
I wish I don't have popcorn. But it's more structured as a story and stuff like that. But it is very much so like you're just in this world, you're surviving. There are just happens to be characters that you're doing quests for and stuff. And so I restarted it, trying to like reset what I thought about it. And I feel more or less the same way. I'm still actually only an hour and a little bit into the new save as well. So I haven't made enough progress to really share definitive thoughts on it, hopefully by next week. But I find that like the presentation is really strong. Like the opening cutscene is like really well stylized. The music is awesome. And it's like also very like this vibrant color palette as you play. But I feel like it has a very distinct humor that is not clicking with me, and I don't think it's not funny. I just don't think it's the funny for me, and so I think that's a huge drawback of I'm sure there's some people who are like, that's knee slapping. This thing's the one. This is great. But because of that, I find a little bit more resistance because I'm like, okay, I get it. The dialogue kind of.
I was gonna say, what kind of humor is it? Is it like puns, or is it just like dry? Like
it's no, it's puns, and it's also like characters are constantly quirky, like they're like it's the main character who's Flux, I think is the name, and then they also have a companion robot that follows them around called Juicebox, I believe. And so like they have this banter that's very much so like like let's quip back and forth to each other, but I'm not like super and it's not voice acted. It's all just kind of like it's word bubbles and stuff that come up. And yeah, there's like certain times maybe I've chuckled like once or twice, but most of the time I'm like, oh, it's not like a huge roadblock, but I think it's preventing me from getting invested because I'm not like as like invested in the dialogue of like, oh, what's next? What's going to happen next? What's the next pun? So I think that, but again, we'll follow it up on it next week with hopefully more of a definitive thought. But yeah, that one's from Butterscotch Shenanigans, which is a great name for a studio.
Yeah, anyway, absolutely.
What about you, Nick? I'll toss it back to you.
The main thing that I've been playing this week is more Sea Frog. Last week I brought that up and we had a little bit of a discussion on it about how I was feeling a little bit mixed about it. At this point, I've essentially finished the game. I haven't rolled credits on it, and I'll possibly get into that reason in a bit here. But I've essentially seen the entirety of the game, and it took me about 15 hours of playtime to get to the point that I'm at right now. And yeah, like this game really was more frustrating for me to play than fun to play, which really kind of stinks because like on the surface, like I described last week, like the art style I really dig. I think it looks great. It actually, something I didn't mention last week that I actually really appreciate is the animation in the game. Everything has a very fluid kind of animation, and like sometimes they stylize it and like animate it more like on twos, I guess you would say, for different like things, like if you get like a special upgrade chip or something, like he'll like animate on twos, and it gives it like a little bit of a retro flourish and stuff. So like the animation quality is really nice. The music is, I mentioned it's got that kind of like punk rock feel. There's maybe not enough unique music tracks to where like I'm like, oh, the music is great, but like what's there is fine. And yeah, like I described, you get into this flow state, and I definitely realized it more playing it into the later hours, where like I was starting to get a little bit of a handle on, the movement and stuff, and I was able to like get more of a mastery of like, okay, here I can just like, robot my fingers essentially, and I can, perform a couple of these things. However, all the things that I mentioned last week about the game being really frustrating just kind of kept amplifying the later that I was playing also. And one of the biggest things is the inconsistency of the control, which I think is the biggest, like, outside of, the punishing deaths, is the most frustrating thing. Because I'll give an example. There's these, I think I mentioned it last time briefly, but you talk to this NPC that appears called the Ratty Godmother, and it's this rat character. And essentially, as like revenge for you killing these rat enemies in the stage, they spawn in this giant, like, hard, precise platforming challenge. And it's like they'll put like spikes and hazards and explosive barrels like all over the place. And it's designed to be like a very specific route that you have to take to get through it and get, whatever money item that they spawn at the end. Mm-hmm. And it's designed to be like, multiple attempts, trial and error, like kind of get through it, because they spawn you right at the beginning of the line every time. But the thing that I grew so frustrated with beyond just the challenge of the platforming was how it felt like on the controller I was doing the same thing every time, and different things were happening on the screen when I was doing it. So for example, there's one where basically there's like a little barrel at the start that you can break, and it gives you some boost meter that you're going to need, most likely. And then in this game, I forget if I mentioned this, but when you're riding your skateboard wrench, if you jump onto a roof or like a ceiling, you will continue to ride on the ceiling. You'll come off of the ceiling if you're not boosting, but if you're boosting, you will stay attached to the ceiling. So they do a lot of these things where it's like you'll be switching from like the ground to the ceiling, and you have to like let go at certain times to clear certain gaps, which is all good and fun. But multiple times when I was resetting, like I would be holding, let's say the left stick and my boost button, because I know I wanted to boost immediately, like right out of the gate. And it would like boost me really, really fast into a hazard, or it would boost me not enough into a hazard, or it'll boost me the right amount and I'd be able to land it.
To hear it.
With curved surfaces, the game does this really weird thing where like it tries to think of where you want to go. So basically it's kind of hard to explain. Like it's going to guide you where it thinks you want to go, but that is dependent on where you land on the curve. So if you're on like, say there's like a curve like this. If you want to go this way, you would have to be on like the lower part of it whenever you attach to go this way. If you're on the upper part of it, it sends you up. And usually they would have like hazards there. So it's like consistently, like I could never land it in that sweet spot where I knew I was going to go the way I wanted. It would just like start sending me up into hazards. And again, it's just like when you're doing this multiple times and it feels like on the controller you're doing the same thing, it's like, why is he just going off and running into spikes constantly? And that got it very annoying. And that was similar to what I said about like the manuals not having like a very consistent sweet spot. That was something that I struggled with the entire time I was playing, because especially later on in the game, there's a lot of different instances where they use that specific like level layout essentially. And yeah, it just really started to grind my gears. There's later parts where there's these frozen AC vent kind of thingies, and if you run into those, you get froze into a block of ice. It completely stops your controls until you spam the right trigger to break out, and it usually takes at least 5 or 6 button presses to break out. So that gets like obnoxious when you're trying to get to a specific spot and there's 15 different, AC units that are freezing you. Right. There's this one element also in the area where you have to activate this. I think they call it a convention oven. It's like a oven essentially in this area, and you take these little chunks of like coal essentially to put in the oven, and then you get this little character that's like a ball of fire, and you have to take it to different ice blocks in the level to unlock new like side rooms or unlock new paths. But the little fire guy will burn out unless you run into like another heater area to like reignite the fire on it. And this then gets annoying because you couple all of the issues that I have with the various platforming controls with another timed element that can, you know, you're 2 jumps away from getting to where you need to go, and then it burns out, and then it's like, okay, I have to go all the way to the other side of the level again to reignite it, because you can't just go up to a heater and ignite it. You have to take it to the oven, and only the heaters will reignite it while it's lit. So it's just like, there's just multiple things that this game does that it feels like it's actively just trying to annoy you at every single moment. And the presentation does not lead you to believe that, at least in something like the comparison that I would make is something like Super Meat Boy, right? Where it's like kind of cartoony, but I still feel like even like the art direction or something about that game kind of conveys that it's like a bit brutal, like, you know, with all the saw blades and everything everywhere. This game really doesn't have that presentation factor, I feel like. And so
no, I was just checking out the gameplay, and yeah, it's very like, you know, vibrant. I mean, I forget what you compared it to last week, but I think it was, I'd kind of say like that Battle for Bikini Bottom-esque, like,
kind of, yeah,
like, you know, color scheme, animation.
Yeah, and it's just like the more and more that I played it, I was just like, man, why is this like this? Is what I kept saying to myself as I was playing. Something I didn't mention last time, I said that it was a puzzle platformer. And I didn't think I got the impression early on, but it definitely started to reveal itself later that the game has more Metroidvania elements to it. You are supposed to go to the different ships to unlock different items to help you get further in each of the ships. So it's less about like I'm doing the first ship and then doing the second one, as it is like I'm halfway through the first ship. Let's go over to the second one and see what I can do over there. Sort of a thing.
I see.
Which is okay. But you know how I mentioned in some recent conversations we had about, you know, Metroidvanias and getting lost specifically for me. A lot of the time, what the issue is you'll be presented with a obstacle. So I'll use Metroid as an example. One of the earliest obstacles that people usually get presented in those games is a missile door. And essentially, it's a locked door that, to that point, you would just use your arm cannon to open doors. But this door, you need missiles. So you have to explore, go find missiles, and then eventually, once you have your missiles, you come back to the door, use the missiles on that door, and then you proceed. That's kind of how they lay out a lot of things in typical Metroidvanias. What this game does, somewhat weirdly, is like it's almost the inverse, where you will find the item you need for something, but you will have not come across a thing to use it on. And so it ends up getting really confusing, where it's like, okay, I just have this item, I wonder what that's used for. And then like sometimes hours later, like I come across a thing, it's like, oh, that's where that one random item that I found is supposed to be used for now. And so then you have to go back, get that, and bring it there, which again, like, it's not like a huge issue, but it is something that when I'm playing, it's just kind of confusing, and it doesn't really like telegraph itself all that well from that perspective. The other thing that I wanted to bring up are the bosses, which the game does have bosses. Initially, I thought that they were cool, but as I went further in, they are definitely very similar in design. How it works is you'll be dropped into like a level essentially, and it has like a bunch of platforms and hazards, and it's like a pretty wide room essentially is how I'll describe it. And there'll be spots in the level that the boss will move to, and you will have to platform your way to the boss to essentially like hit them in the spot that they're sitting, if that makes sense. Sure. And usually they have elements that try to stop you from getting there, and then the boss will move after a certain amount of time. And initially it's fun, just kind of like platforming around and being like, oh yeah, I got to this spot, jumped up, like hit it on the, like the first one is like I think like a squid or something like that that's in a window, and you like smash the window and, you know, hit the boss that way. But then the later bosses, they do just like the same thing where it's like, okay, I'm over here, I'm gonna wait here for 20 seconds for you to get over here. Up too late, I'm gonna go over here. And they also have these just like other tiny little, like, again, annoying things about them, where the second boss is this like chicken boss. And the gimmick in that fight is that there's these chickens all around the arena. And if you run into a chicken, it'll fill up a meter. And if the meter fills up, the giant chicken boss just starts like attacking and tracking you for like 30 seconds. So then you have to run away from it. And then, yeah, it's just kind of the same thing, but like with like a little, you know, side annoying gimmick thrown into it. And all of that, you know, this conversation, because I don't want to spend all day on Seafrog again. It's like, I had fun with the game, coming back to it and being like, because you would make enough progress where it's like, okay, well, I don't want to drop it now because like I can see like the ending in sight, right? But just like almost at every single turn, like I mentioned, there's just something annoying about the game that I find very frustrating. And last week I kind of mentioned it was like, well, maybe it's just the genre that I don't really like. But I think after putting the 15 hours in, it just kind of solidified where like something with the game's control and mechanics combined with a lot of the design decisions has just like really made this conflicting, frustrating kind of experience for me. And if you like those type of games, then I would definitely recommend giving Seafrog a try, especially if you like to challenge yourself and you like hard platformers. I do think that there is something here that you will, you know, get some enjoyment out of. For me specifically, I do not like those games, and by the time that I hit the end of this game, I was like, okay, I'm just done. Like, I had so little fun at times that it like overshadowed the fun that I did have with the game.
Sure, I definitely have. Yeah, I know what you mean. And well, I'll just say this: if you are interested in the game, Seafrog is out now on PC via Steam. It is interesting. I do have a question for you though, before we jump off the topic entirely. So obviously, we talked about a little bit, I think, mod chips, but there's specifically, it says, for a relaxed experience, equip a wellness mod chip to enhance your health. Have you ever tried that? Does that have any benefit of
it is essentially like additional hearts. So you start the game with 3 hearts. If you attach certain wellness chips, you can get up to, I think, 6 hearts total. But
okay.
But again, like based on how, you know, the damage is dealt in the game, you could take a hit and then it sends you in an unbreakable animation all the way down to a bottom of a level.
6 hearts. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so the time wasted to get back to where I was, you know, the extra heart didn't really matter that much to me.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought you meant you just like set off a bunch of traps on your way back and just you're dead by the end of it.
Yeah. It's good that you bring up the mod chips again, because I should touch on those, because I'd mentioned, like, you know, maybe there's one that's for, you know, increasing the manual sweet spot or something like that. As far as I could find, there were none. I got almost all of them. I'm missing like a 3 or 4, I think. But all of them are only factor in certain parameters. So there's one that does health, one that gives you more fuel for your boost meter, one that lets you increase your speed of your boost. And then there are a couple that give you different like abilities. So there's these things that are in the environment called like mag walls and mag bumpers. Certain mod chips allow you to interact with those. And if you don't have those equipped, you just can't interact with those interactables. So there's not really any that get down into the nitty gritty of like control or anything. It's really just kind of modifying like health and abilities that you have.
Sure. Right. Well, yeah, I'm, it sucks that you didn't quite get a good experience out of it, but I definitely know what you mean by, there's certain times where the game's not necessarily bad by like the standard definition, but
Hmm.
it's just, the lows kind of outweigh the highs, and so you end up getting this kind of it muddles the whole experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But there is one other thing that I played this week that we should definitely talk about, and it is a little indie game
Ah,
called
yes.
Legends of the Highborn. Why don't you tell me a little bit
Yes.
about this, Sri?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a secret that I've been keeping from you, because essentially, last month, at the start of March, I had mentioned to Nick that I had just purchased RPG Maker MZ, and I was just like, oh, I'm messing around, seeing what I could do with it, and really just like learning stuff. And then I boot up the software like 5 days after owning it, and again, I'm literally just messing around with like in a random world, seeing, oh, like I can move characters. Like, I mean, it's very like built very well. But um, I was kind of fooling around, and then this pop up said, "Hey, there's the 2025 RPG Maker Game Jam is happening," and so I figured, what better way to get myself acclimated to a new program than by just diving in headfirst into this thing. And so yeah, for the last 30 days, or not, a little bit less than that. But from essentially March 20th to April 20th, I have been working on this thing in secret in my dungeon, and it's as of 420, it is out, and it's a very apt kind of date for the project because I've had this idea for a very very long time that essentially is um I think the initial pitch was imagine like Magic Treehouse for adults was the idea, and the idea was kind of based off of the Chumbags and like how Alexa, myself, and Austin would be uh, transported through. There's lore behind this, by the way, Nick, which I won't get into here, but essentially we get into these like universes and we explore, and there's actually I think this is the first time I've ever said this, but I wrote a whole. I probably wrote like a 95% of a novella that is this story, but it's us going into a spy novel. And so it's like a James Bond spoof. And so
Nice.
each iteration is a spoof of something. And so this was a kind of a spoof of a JRPG, and so it's kind of the stoner comedy JRPG. And yeah, it's a hell of a ride getting through here because I mean initially I started it with this idea, and it was just me working on it, and I was doing taking videos of it, like a video diary that I could edit together and put up as kind of like, hey, here's my journey through kind of quick game development. But then about a week into the project, I ended up, I was talking to people on the forums for the game jam, and I worked my way into a composer, and so then like there's this pressure of like, okay, now it's real. I have to finish this. Like, it's not like the idea when I started the video was like, all right, even if I don't, even if I mess up, at least there'll be an entertaining video at the end of it. But no,
Hmm.
now it's like, okay, I have to lock in, and so yeah, that's what I did. 30 days of a lot of kind of mapping out, a lot of writing, and ultimately, and I didn't know how much it was gonna kind of result into, but according to I think what people have been saying, it's about an hour, a little over an hour of gameplay. So Nick, I'm curious, dude. You've I think probably are the record holder. There's a few people now who have played it, but you're I think the first person to have rolled credits on it. So and and also like play tested it essentially in some
Hmm.
regard. So yeah, how's your experience going through this weird trip?
Yeah, it was really interesting because obviously you had told me that you were entering in the game jam after just getting the engine and everything. I was like, oh, that's ambitious. So, um, yeah. it was I knew the premise and everything beforehand, so I was expecting like a a stoner comedy JRPG like you mentioned. I was actually kind of surprised that the I don't think that the stoner elements like really come through a whole lot outside of like specific very like, intentional areas. So like I get
Yeah,
that. But what I actually was surprised by were the way that you subverted expectations for the JRPG part of that game, because there's some pretty funny like little gags, and specifically I highlighted the writing that you did. I wasn't like, I know you're a writer and everything. Obviously, I've read your novellas and stuff,
yeah.
but yeah, there was some really good little jokes in there. I like the I forget the character's name, but the one that specifically is telling jokes, like in the corner of the town, and you kind of go through the different jokes. There was a couple in there that I thought was funny. Yeah, and
And then shout out, by the way, that's a Easter egg to I'll say this. I'll say it's an Easter egg to my wife's dad. There you go.
nice.
That's he's always cracking those jokes. So that's what that is.
Yeah, the music. Shout out to your composer. You were telling me before I had even played or really seen much of it that you got the music and that it really tied everything together. And yeah, it definitely fits the vibe with the RPG kind of nature of it. I liked the battle theme. I liked the town theme. The forest theme is very like, moody and spooky. I texted you and said that it was like the Lost Woods from Zelda. So,
dude, I will say that like I don't know. I don't want to cut you off if you have more to say, but we can get back to it. But essentially, the music, yes, it was a huge thing, and the I didn't I didn't realize like in my head when I was working on it solo, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a stoner comedy JRPG. But then when I had to like, when Hinosia, who's the composer, who's just really did some great stuff for this, in my opinion. When we hopped on the call and I was like showing her what I was working on, I was like, so, and there's a point. So like, I mean, it's essentially, I by then I had like the first opening of the game created, and so I was like, yeah. So you're starting this room, and then you go into the bathroom, and then she's like, oh, and then you're in this fantasy world, and I was like, and that's what's weird, isn't it? And so like explaining how just stupid the concept was to someone that was not me was interesting experience. I was like, oh, I have to like learn how to pitch this correctly. But yeah, go ahead. I'll get back to my other stuff.
But yeah, I thought for like an hour long bite-sized JRPG, like you kind of had everything you really needed in it. There was dialogue, there was even dialogue options at certain parts. I liked the when you're talking to the bartender, the fade to black and lore exposition joke. I thought that was really good.
To be honest, that's because I didn't have enough time to write the damn thing. I was just like,
I mean,
it was
it
like
works.
3 days before. Yeah, it was like 3 days before it was due, and I was like, fuck. what does happen here? And I was like, I guess we'll never know.
Specifically, Austin saying, "I'm a believer." That was like the nice little cherry at the end of that. Like, so yeah, I like that. You have your kind of fetch questy kind of objectives. Speaking of, I also like the subversion for the wedding ring quest. I thought that was pretty nice. I'm surprised more games don't do that, or if they do that, then I guess I'm not playing the right games. But and then there's the battle system also, which like it's simple. Like I didn't really struggle with it, but again, you made this in like 20 days, and it's like a bite-sized JRPG. What's there is like serviceable, and it doesn't really get that boring or anything. You just kind of get to see all the weird kind of enemy designs and go through it.
Yeah. I won't go too far into like the behind the scenes, just in case. I'm sure there'll be another place for me to fully dissect this game. And I'll also avoid spoilers because again, it's for a lot of people, this is probably the first time they're finding out about it. So you should definitely go check out Legends of the Highborn. But the So first of all, I'll kind of briefly go back. The soundtrack, from the start, I was like, I could use copyright-free music, or license some random stuff, but there's something like I mean, look, the music is so important in video games, and as an example of this, I like to say, like, think about, like, go listen to a piece of music from a video game you played when you were a child, and not have it immediately be like, oh, like I remember this memory, like,
Hmm.
whatever it is. Like for me, the Black Ops 2, like like menu screen music, um or Modern Warfare, and like Assassin's Creed 2 theme music, like stuff like that just kind of really pulled me back. And so for me, I was a little bummed out, but then when the music started coming in, I was like, oh, like for me, it's also because I work so, I hear it so often. RPG Maker has this really weird quirk where if you're putting in the sound and then you hit play to like sample it, if
Hmm.
you don't specifically hit stop, it just keeps playing. And there'll be times where I'm like, okay, I'm like so in the zone that'll be like, a time will have passed, and I'm like, what? Why do I still? Is the game running? And then I'm like, no, it's because I forgot to hit stop. So there's parts like I've just like have the music just stuck in my head.
Uh-huh.
But it's also a testament to like the fact that I think the music is very feels very in its own. Like we went back and forth on like what we wanted, and we went with this kind of SNES inspired type of music, and I think she
Hmm.
really nailed that. And yeah, I will kind of say that it was a lot of fun coming up with the random stuff of. I don't think my idea was to, well, it was definitely like a lot of inside jokes. There's a surprising amount, like, for it was honestly a little bit like stupid of me to include so much optional stuff, but it was also like, okay, you can, I always find it really interesting of, oh, if you want to spend more time in this, I want there to be more that you get from it, right? And so
Hmm.
there's like certain dialogue exchanges between the characters, which are like caricatures of myself, Austin, and Alexa, that you can like you that are like totally random. Like, so based on like literally where you're walking. It's like triggered to the spot in the map, and it's one block. So if you
Hmm.
miss that block while you're running through, you just don't see it. But it's like this random conversation. Um and yeah, there's a lot of weird things that I hope people pick up on in terms of um yeah, like the season pass. There's an alternate ending as well that was kind of the first real thing. Like even before I really knew, I was like, what how to make the game. I was like, there's got to be an alternate ending where this happens. And
Hmm.
and uh, and one of the things I will say to kind of RPG Maker's credit is that it's a really like once you understand the kind of the basics, you can do a lot in terms of scripting it a little bit more custom to what your players are doing. And so, you mentioned like the dialogue options and stuff that like that kind of thing is really interesting to do, and the way you can have triggers set up so that you can. I mean, I didn't do it too much in this, but based on what you say, I can then actually have a cause and effect later on in the game as well. And so stuff like that is was fun for me to kind of play around with here. And I'll also I'm like trying not to like choke out the information. I'm trying not to trip over my words. Shout out to Nick in the game because he's the gatekeeper for a certain the alternate ending that I was talking about. And also if you here's I'll say this, Nick, if you so have you cleared yourself out of the area? Like, have you gotten past yourself? I'll say that.
I did it by talking to the minister like a couple times, and then they got fed up and were just like, okay, I'll just tell him to move. That's how I got past me.
Yeah, you know what? That is, yeah. I'm glad you did that. I was wondering if people would accidentally stumble into that. Yes, you can. In fact, that is the path to the alternate ending. Jesus Christ. Um, is you get a quest from the minister, and you can either do the quest, but then again, some of this, like, if I'm giving you the behind the scenes look, I'm breaking the illusion. But essentially, I was thinking I was writing through the game, it was about 2 weeks in, and I was like, okay, I just want to finish the game build so I can test everything.
Hmm.
And so I don't know what the quest for the minister would be that she would be asking you to do. And so I was like, fuck it. I'll just have it so that if you ask her 3 times, she's just like, all right, fine. I'll just give it. And so that was for me to test it so I could go and like get you out of the path and then go over there. But then I was just like, I came up with a quest and I was like, no, actually, I'll just leave it in there. So if anyone bothers the minister enough, you get it. But if you do finish the quest, there is an alt, like you get the path open, but then also you get some extra loot, so to sweeten the deal a little bit.
Gotcha.
But once Nick has left that area, you can go back to the tavern and he'll be there and he'll give the players a little something extra. So,
Hmm.
it was fun to come up with those things and kind of I don't think I'm anywhere near making a living world, but I think it's like I understand the building blocks of like, okay, now I know how to make something that's a little bit more a dynamic, a world that kind of responds to you.
Hmm. I have one major question that I gotta ask, and that is
Okay.
obviously you were under time pressure. Obviously, you were learning these tools. What was the biggest pain point in getting the game to the finish line?
The biggest pain point. I will I will say I was lucky in that I didn't have too many experiences. There's two things that that I think maybe I was a little bit off on. So the first thing is map sizes. I don't know what I was doing in the first part. And so like I was like, done through the opening parts of the game and I realized that, oh man, this stuff does not look right on the screen when you're playing it. It's like and I don't know how I didn't notice. I'd hit play to play test it and like there'd be just black bars on like, not just like the aspect ratio of the game because it is a retro aesthetic game,
Hmm.
but like even that screen will have giant black bars, but I was like, aesthetically, this is beautiful. And so like I had to really like go back and rework and resize all that stuff. And the second thing is and no names need to be put out there, but essentially along with having a composer, I originally had an artist as well on the project, but unfortunately that artist could not deliver what was needed in time at all. And so that meant that a lot of the things that I thought that would have turned out better that I didn't focus enough on, that like it was like 3 days to the showdown and I was like, okay, how do I draw and like what do I draw? And so it became like yeah, like there's certain aspects that I'm like I'm still gonna go back. I'm gonna try to figure out how to make it look better. But like certain like the enemy designs were not what they were. Like those were like all the enemies and stuff like that came in very last 3 days. Like all those enemies, including final boss and the alternate boss, were all like last 3 days.
Wow.
And um actually I have one more thing is the battles. The battles balancing battles was a pain, a huge pain. And learning how to like what was the right like what health to give people or enemies and how do you balance that so that your people
Hmm.
aren't just flying through or where it's like, oh my god, these bosses are kicking my ass and or these enemies more so are kicking my ass.
Hmm.
And there's actually, I think the only person other than me that had play tested it before the game came out was Alexa, and her note was specifically when she was playing it. I was like, God damn, turn down like the enemy encounters because it was. I mean, I don't know how it is right now in your opinion, Nick, but it was like it was turned up to way too much. It was just like like every 5 steps you were going into an enemy counter, and so Alexa was like, you have to turn this down. The combat is not deep enough to be warranted like this much.
Yeah, I definitely at a certain point in the forest just started escaping
Escaping
during some of
100%
those.
for sure.
They definitely were popped up frequently, but I did find the uh encounter defrequentizer or whatever that was called. So I thought
Yes,
that was nice too.
that was added literally so that I could be like, hey, if you want the choice, that is there. So yeah, definitely some more changes to be made for Legends of the Highborn, but I am incredibly proud that I was able to actually to get it done. And I like, so this was the last thing for this conversation is that I had released the game before, as some of you might know, Chocolate Milk Clicker, and I've talked about it at least to like Nick and kind of my other friends, of which I have certainly, about how like Chocolate Milk Clicker was like a cool experience, but it wasn't fulfilling of I want to like it doesn't scratch the itch of I want to make a game and I want to tell a story and do that.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, every year I kind of write down like stuff like goals I want to do, and this year I was just like, man, I don't know, I want to make a video game. And specifically actually my goal was to write a video game. I wanted to write a video game, and then to have now actually done that, and also not just write, but like made a game that now people can and have also downloaded and are playing, is a very it's crazy. It's a weird experience, but I'm glad. I'm like, it's just like, yeah, it's like I'm on a buzz the last few days. That like I was able to get this thing out the door, and now I need to once the buzz kind of slowly simmers down, I can go back and make all the changes and fixes that I want before kind of putting a final stamp of approval on it and moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Congratulations, because not only did you just get the tools, but you, like you said, you dove in head first, and you have actually something to show for it at the end. So yeah, you should be proud of that. That's really, really awesome.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, and again, thank you for playing it, and also essentially play testing it, because God, I needed that. It was some kinks in that thing that I was finding out from Nick live play testing it.
What, you can't have a fully featured, completely bug-free game in 20 days? What's the promise of AI that these companies keep telling me?
Yeah, no. Once it'll be great once EA's software comes in. I can just say, make me a game with cardboard, and it'll just give me a giant cardboard pyramids. Can't wait. But of course, there's a few other things that are in the nearer horizon that we don't have to wait as long for, Nick. So why don't we talk about them? It's time to talk about the news and what's popping off in the world of gaming.
Yeah. So
where do you want to start?
Let's start with some updates to our Switch 2 kind of news cycle that has been popping up here and there.
This is turning into the Switch 2 podcast, of course.
Yep, we'll have the weekly segment. Yeah. But yeah, we were speculating a week or two ago about pricing changes that possibly would be coming to the Switch 2, because essentially the day that those prices were announced, the tariffs started popping off like fireworks. So but we do have some information about that now, and Nintendo has come out and said that they are sticking to the $449 and I believe $499 price points for the two Switch 2 bundle,
very surprising,
console and console bundle with Mario Kart. However, the accessories will see price increases. I think ultimately, like if I had to try to find a route through that hairy situation, this is probably the route that I would have taken it. Keep the console the same price. We're assuming the games the same price, but have the controllers, the camera, whatever, have those go up. Right. That's probably the through line that I would have tried to strike with it. I'm not sure that we have confirmed prices for the accessories yet, but we have seen amiibo prices at several retailers.
I think the Joy-Cons are now $90.
Okay.
The pair for the Joy-Cons. So
another $10 increase or so. So
yeah,
that makes sense. The amiibos, though, have you seen the prices for these things?
No, I have not.
So to give a little bit of historical context, I believe when amiibos first came out, like the first line of Smash Brothers amiibos, they were like $12.99, and that was kind of like a consistent price point for a while. The last couple years, we started to see a little bit of a rise. Some of them up to like $15.99, I think was like another kind of standard for some of the later Smash ones. Some of the Zelda ones would come out around like that $15.99. And then you have your external ones like your Metroid or your Guardian amiibo that are like specially made ones, and those would be like a bit higher. The Tears of the Kingdom ones, I believe, actually, this is a different one now that I'm thinking of. Those, I think, were $19.99, and Ganondorf was like $24, I think, because there was a little bit more plastic or whatever. The new Zelda amiibos that they announced are going up to $29.99, and the Street Fighter 6 amiibos are $39.99, which is...
Oof. Dang.
Yeah, that kind of hurts a little
Pretty
bit.
penny.
They are cool looking amiibos, but I don't know how many casual amiibo collectors are going to be swayed with a $39.99 price tag on that.
Yeah. I will say that Nintendo.com has posted. These are as of from the horse's mouth. I think the horses are the ones that dictate the prices. These are the prices that they've said for the Switch 2 and its accessories. So obviously, Switch 2 $449, Switch 2 and bundle $499 with Mario Kart World. Mario Kart World individually is $80. Donkey Kong Bonanza is $70. Pro Controller is $85. Joy-Con, actually I was wrong. Joy-Con 2 pair is $95. Joy-Con 2 charging grip is $40. US dollars, all these, by the way. Joy-Con 2 strap, $14. Joy-Con 2 wheel set, $25. Switch 2 camera is $55. The Switch 2 dock is dock set, it says. I don't know what comes in the set, but $120. Switch 2 carrying case and screen protector are $40. Switch 2 all-in-one carrying case is $85. Switch 2 AC adapter is $35. And the official branded Nintendo Switch micro SD express card from Samsung at 256 gigs is $60. So that's the official confirmed prices. And again, pre-orders start this week for in the US for that.
So based on information that I have on like current prices for Switch hardware, it sounds like that's about a $5 increase on most of those. I think the dock set might be like a $10 increase. Usually what that is, at least from Nintendo, is the dock and the power cable together, I believe, is how they sell that. But yeah, it sounds like about a $5 to $10 increase on most of those. So I guess that's like, that could be worse. They could have done like, 15, 20 increase, but...
One thing I will say that, regarding the prices though, is the fact that it's the Breath of the Wild. Do you see this? Breath of the Wild version on Switch 2 with the DLC is like $90.
I did see that, which is
a crazy ask.
Like
it's a crazy ask.
That is peak Nintendo price shenanigans, I would say, and that's coming from a Zelda fan and somebody that is a Nintendo fan, but like that is bonkers, man. Like, come on.
Yeah.
$90 for Breath of the Wild. Come on, that game is like almost a decade old now. Like,
it was not even. It launched their last system, but it was on the system before that natively. It's a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah.
But I think we're coming up on like a month and a half at this point for the Switch 2 to be out. Nick, are you any more convinced? Maybe coerced into getting one, or are you still kind of like, we'll see how it goes?
I've been asked that a lot in my day-to-day life, and I honestly don't think I'm gonna be able to succinctly or like specifically answer that question until launch day is here. Like, if
sure
the thing that I keep giving to people that ask me is like, if I get like emotionally swept up in the launch of a new cycle and I have it there on the store shelf that I can buy, like I might pick it up and be like, hey, like, Switch 2, like there's certain new releases that have come out for games where I'm just like, I wasn't planning on getting this, but everybody's talking it up. Like, I want to hop in and be part of the conversation. So I'm not going to rule that out. Still, like the concept of Mario Kart being the main thing that I would be playing, it's just like, well, I don't need to play that. Like, I know I'm gonna have a good time with it. I like what I'm seeing as far as what they're showing for the different improvements and changes that they're making. But is it like, oh my god, if I don't have Switch 2 on day one, I might as well just cry and hang up the gamer towel or whatever? Like, no. So Yeah, like I don't think I can accurately say until we are
That's
at
fair.
launch day. But I'm gonna
I
I'm
mean,
gonna
I
sit on that fence.
definitely my experience with the first Switch was very much so the up until launch. I was like, I have no interest in this, just because the Wii U wasn't for me, and not that I was like, not that I was saying that it was the same thing, but there's definitely some of that stink that kind of carries through when
Sure.
something like that happens. And it wasn't until like literally probably a week before the console came out, I was like, the coverage started coming out, the reviews started coming out, and I was like, ah, shit, this looks cool. This looks like the PlayStation Vita but bigger, and like it's just it was just right. There was this perfect storm, and I tried to look everywhere for this thing, could not find it because obviously pre-orders were all gone, and it was the Switch was selling like hotcakes when it came out. So
Hmm.
for me, I actually ended up. I think it came out right April, and I ended up picking it up in May because that was the earliest I could get it. But and even then, like that walk that I had to get my Switch, because we were in college, and I got off the bus, Nick, at campus, and then I walked to the GameStop by that freaking Walmart. And so it was just like uphill, and then as I got there, I got I got a Switch, and then as I was walking back, it started to rain, so I had to put the sorry, the Switch under my shirt
Hmm.
so that it wouldn't get wet. It was yeah, it was a long journey.
Yeah. Also, like the weird thing about like launch, right, was I was more excited for Switch 1 because Zelda was the big game, right? And obviously, as a lifelong Zelda
Right.
fan, it's just like I had a Wii U locked and loaded for Breath of the Wild, so I knew I was going to be playing it regardless, if I could get a Switch or not. And thankfully, the games were pretty much at parity with each other. Um,
Yeah.
but that luster that could have been carried over with Tears of the Kingdom, it was more like a Switch swan song than a new hardware kind of a thing. So it's like
Yeah.
I was not expecting a new Zelda mainline Zelda game, and I'm not going to be expecting that for at least like 3, 4, 5 years at this point. So
Yeah.
like the thing that would have been like I have to get the Switch 2 day one, like we're already kind of past that, and it's just 60 FPS patch or whatever, and it's like I don't need that.
Yeah. I mean, look, Nintendo's very infamous for their pricing. I think logically for me, something that would have been more enticing would have been like, even if it was 80, $90, a bundle with both, like hey, here's a Zelda starter kit, Breath of the Wild, here's the Kingdom,
Hmm.
and go ahead and knock yourself out with this kind of upgraded version of the game. That would have been much more like, even if people who might not have picked up the Switch, which I don't think is anyone at this point, because that thing I sold a like top 5 best selling consoles of all time.
I think it's number
But
2. I think it's only trailing the PS2 right now.
PS2, oh
Yeah.
dang, yeah. So
And Sony
yeah,
keeps moving the goalposts, which is hilarious. Every single time Switch is closing in, they're like, actually, it was like an extra 2 million. Like,
Actually, I remember my uncle bought a bunch. Actually, so it's might have been a little bit more. Yeah, no, it's going to be a interesting launch to follow. And again, we're gonna be checking in with this thing. Maybe not every week, depending on how things go. Like next week, I don't know what news would drop that next week that would be unless like bots have taken over the Switch 2 pre-orders. I don't know, like something would happen. But we'll be tracking this release as it comes up, and I'm curious to see if if people are happy with the way Nintendo is rolling this thing out, or because obviously there's outcry, but there's always outcry about every
right.
every goddamn thing on the internet with gaming, or anything, I guess. But or if this was an actually negative impact, like the pricing and all that conundrum kind of actually impacts the way this thing launches, and we see
Hmm.
Nintendo coming out of the gate with this, as a follow up to their absolute smash home run with a little bit of a fumble. But
Yeah, I'm not expecting it, but I was reminded listening to like a podcast or a video the other week that there was outcry when the 3DS, I believe, launched because of the pricing, and they did end up dropping the price for that. Like I said, I'm not expecting that for
Sure,
Switch 2. Like, I think we're just in a different era now, but
we're in the Bowser era.
There is some
different
precedent there where, you know, if it is impactful enough, they might make a decision on that.
I will. I mean, look. While we're on the Switch topic, it is interesting that Shuhei Yoshida has also pitched in about the Switch 2 conversation, which is interesting. Seeing a former PlayStation head kind of talking about another thing, kind of informally, and kind of he shares a lot of this. I think kind of the sentiment that people have been echoing about this pricing and all that stuff. I guess, but also Reggie has shared out like an interview about how it was an uphill battle for him to get Wii Sports as a bundle with the original Wii, and how much that impacted the Wii's kind of not just the sales, but the way that console was appreciated. It was almost like, it was a sign of goodwill almost, in terms of, hey, you bought this new console, this game, you will. And my family certainly played the crap out of Wii Sports, and it gave us a bunch of value for it. And similar to also, I think the same thing with the controller being packed in with Wii Play. So yeah, I think this is Nintendo kind of going back to their roots. And so yeah, I'm really interested to see how this console launch comes up. For me, I don't use my Switch enough as is, and so I'll have to wait and see. Again, there is 100% a possibility, just like Nick was saying, if everyone's like, the Switch 2 is incredible, it is the best thing ever, and you should play it if you're not an idiot. Maybe if like that stuff happens, and I happen to also see it on the store shelf, kind of readily available, I might be more inclined to picking it up. But as of now, no pre-orders going out.
You already got the Switch 2. It's got a little Valve logo on there.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. This is, yep. Waiting for that check to come in, Gabe. Any minute now.
You can get a check, or you can get a trailer for Half-Life 3. That's where we're at right now.
Dang it. Well, all right. So last thing to kind of cap off the Switch 2 conversation, there was also, in a weird move, like 2 weeks after the reveal, they had a Mario Kart World Direct, which essentially kind of showed off a little bit more about the game. Nick, I haven't watched it, but does this actually show? Did this give any more value than the Nintendo Treehouse stuff that they did, like in the days after the?
Yeah. From the Treehouse stuff that I watched, it was really just them kind of going through races and stuff like that. This kind of gave a little bit more mechanical information, and gave an idea of some of the stuff you'll be doing not in races. So it felt, this was like a kind of a weird direct. Like I've seen a lot of people kind of express the sentiment that like it felt a little bit pointless. It did kind of feel like an extended 15-minute version of the trailer that they showed, with like, narration at certain parts. But a couple of the main things that they highlighted that was maybe not evident in the original trailer is there's some new mechanics with like a boost jump, where if you are holding the drift button but not holding a direction, you can do like a little jump, and essentially that is how you will jump onto like rails and do the wall riding and stuff. But you can also do things like bounce off of traffic cars and stuff in the different levels. So they were showing some interesting little like movement tech that you could do with that. There's a rewind feature, which I thought was really interesting. Oh my god,
like a Forza Horizon type
I was
of thing?
just gonna say, my mind just remembered that. Like, they have that in that game, right? You could rewind to a certain point. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but yeah, you're totally right. You can do it mid-race. So like the example they show is like a cart driving on the wall, and then they miss a jump to get to like a higher bonus area, and then they rewind it back and do it again and land on the top. But none of the racers will be rewind, obviously, because it's an online game. So like if you use the rewind, you're going to get passed up by like a bunch of people. So kind of a risk versus reward thing, I guess, with that. Or if it's used more as a tool to like workshop, shortcuts and stuff throughout the different levels. And then the other main thing that they kind of highlighted were, activities that you can find in the open world, like free roam. So they showed a couple examples of just like, driving off the beaten path and, jumping off of high, vantage points and stuff like that. But eventually they come across this blue P-switch, and it gives you like a challenge on these rails where you have to jump and collect blue coins on the rails. There's like hidden collectible coins and little pads that activate things in the world. So there's different activities that you can get up to in the open world stuff. And then outside of that, it was just kind of showing off different characters, showing off the outfit customization. I'm
sure they showed off that cow.
Oh, they highlighted the cow for sure. That the voiceover guy, he was just like, and yes, even a cow. Like, had to give it a special little thing there. Yeah. But the one thing I will highlight, and it might be obvious to certain Mario Kart fans, is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The soundtrack is incredible in that game. And a lot of the remixes that they were playing in this trailer sound so good. Like, this band is like they're producing some of the best, like, I would argue, video game music. And like, part of it's like kind of nostalgia bait because it's, Nintendo classic stuff. But they have a remix of Bob on Battlefield from Mario 64 that plays in this. And it's like, whoo, damn, that sounds good. So definitely going to be a contender for soundtrack of the year, I think, for Mario Kart. But yeah, outside of that, it was just kind of more Mario Kart kind of stuff that they were showing off.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, speaking of more of the same, how about some of that Overwatch 2? Honestly, I don't play Overwatch, so it's just a way to transition to the next topic, which I'm going to briefly touch on because I thought it was a little interesting as I was going through the news this week. So Overwatch announced that they're getting a stadium mode, which is described as, according to the Blizzard blog, Stadium is the new best of 7 multi-round way to play Overwatch 2, where 2 teams of 5 face off in magnificent arenas as they purchase upgraded items and powers to radically transform their heroes, all experienced through our new third-person camera. So to quickly kind of highlight the key points, it's 5v5 gameplay. There's role queue only. Play to earn stadium cash, and then you buy items in the armory. You modify your hero with powers. Best of 7 round wins. You have to compete in 3 game modes, and it's a new ranked leagues. There's also rewards you can earn, and like I said, the thing that really caught my eye was that it's a new third-person view. It's not the same that they used to have. So, yeah, if you're an Overwatch 2 person, you're finally getting some new stuff here.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this like a kind of like a Counter-Strike kind of mode?
That's the kind of what I'm getting from it.
It's so interesting. There's a lot of games that are adding that recently. There was I think Halo Infinite is going to be adding a similar type of mode in the future too. And it's like, where's all this random love for Counter-Strike gameplay coming up?
Well, I think to be honest, I think it's more so maybe like the popularity of Valorant and all those kind of other games as well. It's really bubbled up, and I think it's just kind of like, at this point, I would equate this to how Instagram was like, hey, how about some reels, guys? Have not them TikToks. How about some reels? It's like, just another way for games to be like, hey, get your ass back in here. There's whatever you want, you're getting over there. We can give you the same. And so, yeah, it was a bit of an interesting announcement, but again, it literally just happened since the last episode, and we'll be getting it. Well, not we. I don't play Overwatch, but for the nerds who do. It'll be out on the 22nd, I think. So probably by the time this episode airs. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's Stadium is on April 22nd. So you can queue up already, man.
Right on.
You got any interest in Overwatch 2, Nick?
None.
You ever play Overwatch?
Yeah, this is going to sound kind of funny. Similar to my Destiny experience, the only Overwatch I've ever played was the beta on PlayStation 4 for that game. So, yeah, by that point, I had already put about 100 hours into Team Fortress 2, and I was kind of like even at that point, like a decade ago, like hero shootered out for a bit, and Overwatch just, I thought like parts of it looked cool, but it didn't really grab me like it did a lot of other people.
I'll tell you what, I have not played a single minute of Overwatch. I've never just, I don't know, something about it never grabbed me.
Back when we were
Maybe
talking
it's the
about Concord, and I had mentioned that weird thing that I have about snipers in games like that, where it doesn't do a one-shot kill. Overwatch was another example of that, where it was just like, it felt like, and I know it's by design, Team Fortress is also like this, but it's like, sometimes it just doesn't feel fun in that way.
Yeah, I get it. Sometimes you wanna shoot and you wanna feel the power of the weapons that you're using, and that's exactly what you do in Doom: The Dark Ages. They dropped a new trailer for this. I don't want to say the final trailer, but the final probably main trailer. This was a meaty, almost 3-minute trailer that showed off a lot of the kind of set up the narrative stuff. And I rewatched it earlier today and kind of I'll say, to sound professional, I'll say in preparation, but it was just, I just wanted to rewatch it. But they released, a trailer. This is trailer 2. They released a trailer 10 months ago, and it was like a minute something. So this is clearly a step up in terms of just what they're showing you. But also, it's not all gameplay, because there's quite a bit of story here. So, Nick, as the person who is well versed in the new Doom trilogy or upcoming trilogy, what do you think? What's your thoughts on this new trailer 2?
I really like the way it edits their trailers. As an editor myself, they know when to make the right cuts, and they know when to make or when to use the right music for a trailer to really heighten stuff. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, the story stuff, I don't really go to Doom for story, especially in this new trilogy. A lot of that story has been relegated to kind of Souls-esque item descriptions and lore codex entries. If you really want that story, you can dig into those menus and kind of read that stuff, but that was never really where my interest was. This time they specifically have highlighted in broadcasts and stuff before that they wanted to get the story out of those codex entries and make it a more prominent feature, hence the emphasis on cutscenes that you see a lot in the trailer here. And I've seen a lot of people react to that, not necessarily negatively, but not exactly like excited. They're like, kind of like what I just said. It's like, I don't go to Doom for the story, and this seems like a lot of story that they're, shoving in front of the gameplay. Honestly, like, I'm kind of here for it. I think the cutscenes that they were showing, at least in the trailer, like, look really cool, like, just from like a framing kind of perspective. There's this one shot, I think it's in the moment where whoever this antagonist is says, I can never be king as long as you're the only one they fear. And it's this behind the back shot of the Doomslayer standing there with the shotgun and the shield and stuff. And it's just like, man, that just looks so sick. So I think as long as they have enough hype moments, I guess, where you're watching the Doomslayer do Doomslayer things, I think I'll walk away from it happy. Like the characters and stuff here outside of the Slayer, I'm like, they don't strike me as being that crazy or anything, but I think there's definitely, they're putting in some seeds here to have some really cool payoff moments in the game. I mean, specifically just like the concept of the Slayer being like tethered as like a tool for the makers or whatever. Like, there's going to be a part where that tether like breaks, and it's probably going to like, they're going to kick the music on and like get into like some crazy fight or something. Like,
no, I really love my goal, for those of you who don't know, here on the show, Nick is the Doom veteran, and I've played the original, the OG Doom on like multiple devices at this point, but I have not played the new trilogy, and so my goal is to hopefully get into them before, or around the time, I'm not going to say before this rate, because May 15 is coming up fast, but around the time the Dark Ages launches, I want to get into the new Doom trilogy. But kind of my outside perspective of looking in at this, I think, yeah, I really enjoy the way that they're building up the Doom Slayer here. And I'll kind of briefly say one of the things that I liken it to is, I watch a lot of movies, but I also watch a lot of Indian movies, which I think a lot of our audience might or might not be familiar with. And it's not always the kind of maybe what the typical thing that you expect when you think of Indian movies, like, oh yeah, those memes that go around. It's not always that. And the thing that I think, actually, I'll say this: there's a genre of movies in India that I don't think exists in Hollywood. And there's not like a direct translation for it, but it's essentially like Moss movies is what they're called. But they're pure like entertainment movies. I think probably you'd compare it to maybe a Transformers or like a Fast and Furious. But the
Okay.
difference is that their intent is to build. It's all about elevating the main character to be the coolest person in the room. Like it's constantly, it's excessive over slow motion. It's incredibly well timed musical hits to get you like, oh shit. And this trailer does that where it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely story, but like everything in the story is to service the fact that the main character is that guy. And so I really appreciate it. I'm curious to see how the narrative lands here. The one kind of criticism, again, from the outside going in, from everything that they've shown with the Dark Ages, that I feel is that I don't think that the giant stuff really is working in terms of none of it looks like convincing because
Hmm.
any gameplay they show of when you're in the giant mech, fighting off demons or whatever, it just looks like regular world just moving slower. Like it doesn't look
Hmm.
necessarily that you are a giant, and so something about that believability of scale is off, which I think is kind of key to kind of nailing something like this. But everything else looks pretty fucking cool. And yeah, there's some really really cool shots in here. And the first like minute of this trailer is just build up to like to showing the Doomslayer. And
Hmm.
there's some really interesting design stuff as well. Like there's this one shot of like the arm the I don't know what, again, I don't know if there's lore names for it. I know this is a prequel, so I guess maybe not all of it is explained, but it's like a ship, a space, a sky floating ship, and it's coming out of the clouds, and it's like the front of it is just a skull.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like I guess the antagonist's kind of vehicle or whatever. That's sick. And then when they're dropping the Doomslayer in, it's like there's like the clouds, and then there's like the launching thing, and when he drops, it just clears like there's like that little flare of
Hmm.
clouds. It is a nice touch.
My favorite shot of the trailer is whenever they do the like mic drop into the gameplay sequence, and it's one of the shots in there where a projectile is coming in. He parries the projectile. It goes into slow motion. You see like a flaming skull go past, and then he's shooting while having a shoulder-mounted machine gun come out at this demon, and then throws the shield at it. It's just like it's
Oh yeah,
timed
I see
so
it.
perfectly, and yeah, that's the kind
Yeah.
of stuff that like this specifically, this gameplay that they show in the trailer really kind of highlighted like a rhythm that I feel like the combat is going for, where it's more like, parry, riposte with attacks and stuff like that, that the other two in this trilogy don't really have. So that's kind of highlighting what's kind of unique about the new approach they're taking to the combat in this one, which I'm here for it. I think as long as that ends up being satisfying to pull off, then I think, it's going to be another W for old id Software.
Yeah. Well, and then obviously do it is kicking well, and so are a very different genre, but Bloober Team, they coming hot off the success of Silent Hill 2, already signed another deal where they're making another Silent Hill project. No, we don't know what yet.
Hmm.
And they also announced Chronos, The New Dawn, which is the new IP. Um, I'm, similar to kind of, I guess, this is kind of a solo project, right? So this is more in line with, not in line with, I don't want to compare it to something, though it's not out yet, but
Hmm.
similar to how Layers of Fear was a new IP for them, similar to how The Medium was a new IP for them, Chronos is a new in-house IP that they're working with.
Yeah.
which is cool to see.
And we got like a CG kind of teaser, I think last year or earlier this year even. And this is
Year, but
yeah, this is a new gameplay trailer specifically, and definitely feels like they are taking some of those learnings from Silent Hill 2 and kind of applying it here. Third person survival horror. It's I would say it's like a time traveling version of like Dead Space and Silent Hill in a weird way. Part of the Dead Space ism just being like this like weird diver suit kind of thing that your character uses, but it's also kind of sci-fi and everything. Trippy visuals. There's like some like inverted I don't know if you'd call it platforming. It seems like it's pretty like tethered when you're going through it, but some interesting looking level design and this weird kind of mechanic of the enemies like morphing together, and like there'll be like dead corpses on the ground that they can like reabsorb and like change into like a new enemy. So definitely doing some interesting stuff here. I'm curious, Sri, if you would agree or disagree with this, but every time I see footage of Kronos, I'm like, this looks cool. I have more faith in Bloober after Silent Hill 2. This also looks like the game that could get like a 6 when it comes out and, people forget about it. So I don't really know where it's going to land. I think it's going to be good. Like, it looks cool and it looks interesting to me specifically. Like, there's a lot of that kind of style in there that I do find attractive about it. But yeah, there's just something at the back of my head where I'm like, do other people feel this way? Like, are people liking what's being shown here? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I will say that I like when Bloober is. I like the way they tell they're very much so horror, but they do try to do something different while also kind of doing, outsourced work. They also did like Blair Witch as well, and obviously we talked about Layers of Fear. One game that I've played from them that I actually don't think that a lot of people really talk about when it comes to their kind of release is Observer, which originally I believe it was actually the game that came out before Layers of Fear, and then they went back and redid, like, once they were like, okay, we got more money now, more of a reputation, and they were able to secure more of a funding. They went and did Observer System Redux, which is how I played it, and I think that's the one that I would recommend you play, because it's like more of the director's cut. It has kind of things that they wanted in the original cut that they didn't have, or weren't able to kind of include. And so I love kind of seeing them play around with new stuff. And yeah, I mean, the Medium played around with this idea that there's two different worlds that you're kind of switching between. And so here it seems that the body morphing thing, and you were right, by the way, it was October of last year that it was announced. So for Halloween. And this game is described right from their Steam page as a pulse-pounding third-person survival horror game where time is your deadliest weapon and your worst enemy. Survive a brutal future, dive back in time, and stop nightmarish creatures from merging into unstoppable abominations. Oh my goodness, I can't speak. This one, it does look cool. I definitely think that, I don't want to say that they won't miss, but it is, I think, a factor of the Medium. Critically, I think the Medium didn't score super high, but if you go on Steam, it's sitting at a very positive, and so I think it does, at the very least, I think their games do find their audience, which I think is the important part. So it seems their strategy is to, hey, let's do a big project and then spend some of that resources that we get on maybe a more passion project of some kind. And I hope, I certainly hope it turns out well, because it has all the visual flair of a game like this that I would think is entertaining.
I would say, like, to put a bow on my point also, like, I think it is working on me. Like, this is the one game out of all their stuff outside of, Silent Hill 2 and whatever nostalgia might be attached to that, where I'm like, okay, this looks like this is up my alley specifically, like weird sci-fi time travel horror. Like, I definitely am liking what I'm seeing here. So hopefully everything works out for that. And if they are planning a little spooky Halloween release, let's pray that GTA's in November for them.
Yeah. I'm curious before we transition out of it, I am interested to see what genre of games would go unimpacted by GTA 6? Would it be a horror game on Halloween? Because it's like, okay,
Hmm.
that's kind of the peak market, right?
Yeah.
For that to happen. But it's also so massive that it's, it's such a big whale that doesn't matter where you are. It's gonna drink some of, what you're what you're trying to get. So,
Nintendo, I
but
could see counter releasing to GTA because they're probably not going to have GTA. So it's just like, yeah, Switch 2, here's here's 3D Mario, same month.
yeah, here's Mario Odyssey Redux, not Redux. Give us $90 for this thing, and you'll get the same thing you got with the Switch, but now with better frame rate, and also what's a feature you can have? The magnets are his ears. I don't know where I was going with that. Give me more time to think about that one, guys. While you listen to a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Respawn Station podcast is brought to you by RespawnStation.com. Head on over to our independent news media site to hear our thoughts on upcoming games, as well as interviews exclusive to our platform, such as our recent interview with Ray Chase, the lead designer of Sassy Chap Games and the voice of The Wall in the upcoming dating sim, Date Everything. You can check that out along with a whole bunch of other content over on RespawnStation.com. Thanks for your support.
Wasn't that a great ad read? Sri,
Yes.
I know that, the sponsors, they just keep flying through here, but definitely check out that interview with the lead of Date Everything. That was a great interview. Sri definitely took the lead on that one, and it's good questions and good answers, I think, all the way around. So
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I thought of it during our ad break. I've thought of the Switch to Super Mario Odyssey bonus feature. Okay,
lay it on me.
ray tracing. There you go. That's it. And actually, it's also remade entirely on Unreal Engine 5. That's right. Super Mario Odyssey is getting the Oblivion remastered treatment, which is, of course, the main topic for this show. That was just I'm throwing stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and that was the closest I could get to transition us into this behemoth of a topic, because obviously we knew this was happening, but now we got a 20-minute showcase to kind of get us in the mood for this thing, and they did exactly what we thought they would with the reveal that it is out today. So, Nick, what do you think about that? Again, 20-minute, not too, it doesn't overstay its welcome. A little showcase.
Honestly, they showed more than I thought they were going to. I thought literally that this was going to be like a launch trailer and then like a little bit of an interview at the end and being like, yeah, us at Bethesda, we're so proud about the work of, Oblivion and all that.
Virtuous.
And Virtuous, our partners there, they did such a great job. That's kind of what I was expecting. But no, they intro it with like some very moody CG for like the key art, which again looks sick, by the way, if I didn't mention that last week. It's giving like Souls vibe, which like is funny when you look at the actual gameplay for it, but it definitely has a vibe to it. But essentially they went into all this, kind of talking heads interview footage that Bethesda's kind of that's like how they are showcasing their talent at their studio now. For a while, it was kind of like Todd Howard was just the figurehead, and he still is. But I think that there's like been a conscious effort since Starfield to try to like show more departments and faces at Bethesda when talking about their games. And they're showing a lot of archival footage because they did have a making of Oblivion back in the day that would come with the collector's edition and stuff. So they actually had a lot of development footage from back in the day. Yeah. And then eventually you get the money original footage to remake footage transition. And then it goes into this trailer for the game. And we start getting interviews with people from Bethesda and Virtuous about gameplay tweaks and visual overhaul kind of tweaks, what they're changing, what they're retaining, which I actually want to take a quick sidebar and talk with you about this. I think it was incredibly smart, and very honest for them to address the jank factor of Oblivion and not shy away from it, because I feel like there's so much of a emphasis on these like remakes and everything where the studios are like, yeah, like, you know, everything is better than you remember it, but they're
From the ground up.
exactly, and they do that in this trailer slash like, you know, broadcast as well. But at the same time, they're like, you know, Todd Howard's like, it has some charm to it. The
Yeah.
facial animations, they are better, but they are still very of their time. The gameplay is still very of its time. There's this, I find it hilarious. There's this like throwaway shot in there where the character is using like a fire spell on like a bear, and there's like this like ice golem or something next to it, and the ice golem just completely ragdolls and flies up into the air and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so refreshing that they are, you know, keeping that stuff in there, and it's very like forthcoming about it being like the original game with, you know, some improvements and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, but I also wanted to just to put a bow on my part of that. The reason that Bethesda hasn't really, well, I'm not sure if this is the reason, but typically they have not been a studio that pursued remasters to this point. And usually in the community, the touch point to that was an interview that Todd Howard gave where he was asked directly about remastering old games, and it was his viewpoint that he liked the games to exist in the era that they, you know, came from, and didn't like how like certain, this isn't a direct quote, but like it was, he appreciated the original experience and the original intent behind those games. And I think that they struck a very, without having played it, mind you, we haven't played this yet, but from the outside looking at this remaster, that they kind of struck like the perfect balance of like keeping the original feel, it seems, while just like modernizing and not losing sight of that original kind of vision and intent. So that doesn't really end in a question for you, unfortunately, but I'll kick it over to you.
Great question, Nick. And so to answer, I thought this was actually this felt sort of like a no clip documentary, in the best way. I love no clip, and so it had that kind of quality of like, hey, you know, let's sit these developers down and have them talk about the impact of the game they made, and that's kind of the start of how it works. And you know, if you don't know the impact of Oblivion, it may sound a little dramatic because, you know, Bethesda is just this behemoth at this point, but Oblivion is one of those like make it or break it games. Maybe not break it, but like it was the make it game for Bethesda in many ways. And or Morrowind, I'm sure, is also like, you know, people are up in arms about that too. But what I found really interesting was that they showed this kind of, you know, the why this game matters and everything, and then they go into the remaster. But this is like a ground up remake in many ways, because they redid voice lines, and you know, they kind of address also like a little, they touched on the limitations of the original hardware. And I do agree with the sentiment. I hadn't heard that quote specifically, but I do agree with the sentiment that some games are interesting when observed within the confines of their restrictions. Like, you know, the old Oblivion could not have unlimited voice lines because the discs, for the 360 or whatever, had a certain cap. Like you couldn't put as much as you wanted on them, and especially even compared to the PlayStation 3 at the time, which was already on Blu-rays. So stuff like that is interesting. Seeing kind of, okay, this is the limitation, but now we're changing it so that it's adapted to modern conventions. And you know, they also touch on how like third person back in the day seemingly didn't have a crosshair, and now they do, so that it's more of a, you know, you can actually play it in that. And I think at some point, I don't remember the line by line, but at some point they kind of make the comparison that this is sort of like you can come into this almost at a Starfield level of if you've played Starfield, you can play this game and understand that this is like the similar kind of DNA in a way, I think. At least it's kind of what I understood in terms of
I
what
think
they were saying.
the Starfield comparison was specifically for how the third person is functioning, like
Oh,
how
sure,
it
sure.
gives you the same amount of control whether you're in third or first person. Whereas in some of those
Okay,
older
yeah,
Bethesda games, it does change depending on what viewpoint you're
sure,
in.
yeah,
But I mean, I think your point is still valid though. That it seems like a lot of the changes that they made for like UI or even just like interfacing with the game are trying to meld what the original game was doing, but also bring it up to kind of like the Skyrim, Starfield, Fallout kind of touch point that Bethesda's kind of carved out in the modern times.
yeah. And I think this really does open the floodgates for the remaster conversation for Bethesda. And look, I've already seen it, and I know it's only going to get worse from here. Because it's the people are like, "Oh, well, Oblivion's great, but what about Fallout New Vegas? I can only imagine what Fallout New Vegas remastered would be like." And then there's
Mm.
100% there's going to be other people that are like in other communities that are like, "Oh, well, this was Oblivion is great, but why can't I get a Dragon Age Origins remaster? Because it would bomb." Okay, you guys wouldn't fucking buy it. Who are you kidding? You got 10 people buy that thing, and I'm like, you think of spending that much money on the 10 people? Anyway, I digress. I still have bad blood from Origins not allowing me to finish it. If you don't know, you got to tune into the last. Okay, maybe I don't want to say the last episode, but the latest episode of the Retro Gauge show, because yeah, lot to talk about, lot to dissect there.
Mhm.
But getting back to Oblivion, I do appreciate that of how this was rolled out, and it really sucks. And we've talked about it, I think, in the season zero, as I think I've come to call it now of the podcast, where when we talked about leaks and stuff, I think leaks have ruined so much, and this is a case for look. Part of it is leaks. Part of it is like, oh, they put up the website too early. Like, some of that
Mhm.
is also there, and also the court documents and all that stuff as well. But this would have been such an incredible surprise to literally be like, hey, like if like yesterday, as of when we're recording this podcast, they put if you woke up yesterday on Monday morning and you see this thing, huh? All what is that? Like all truths come out, or
All will be
all is
revealed,
revealed.
is what it
Yeah,
said.
yeah, and so like you see that and like what? I mean, that's obviously the four from or yeah, right, four from
Hmm.
Oblivion. Yeah, so it's like, oh, obviously this would make sense. But then having the showcase and being like, oh man, because I do think this showcase did a good job of selling me on this game. Like I was obviously cautiously optimistic, or intrigued by it because I'd played Skyrim. Skyrim's the only Elder Scrolls game that I've played, and I've heard so much about Oblivion, but it was so I don't know. I just didn't have the. It was very low on my backlog. It wasn't a game I was going to get to immediately. But
Hmm.
seeing this thing now, I think that really sold me on like, oh, this is like what I enjoyed from Skyrim, but with better, more updated graphics. Again, a whole bunch of visual and graphical updates, or visual and graphical, the same thing. Visual and gameplay updates to make this thing a modern game.
Hmm.
And again, this is from Virtuous, who's the team. I think most famously, they do a lot of support work, but they are most specifically for what is it, MGS3 remake
Recently,
or whatever.
yeah, the Metal Gear Solid Delta remake is
Right.
being done by them, but yeah, they've done a bunch of other remasters. They've helped out in, like you said, support roles on various games. I think they even were helping out on that Metroid Prime remastered that I've been playing.
Oh
So
shit. Yeah.
yeah, they've been all over the place, and yeah, it's. I think I'm in a pretty similar boat with you, where like I've played maybe like a half an hour to an hour of original Oblivion, and it's always one that like I see the funny memes and everything, and it's like I do want to play that someday, but just never kind of got around to it. And
Yeah. And they show off some of those memes like that, like the fan, like the
mhm,
something fan,
the
right? Like
adoring
he's a
fan.
very yeah, like, and he's a very big meme in the community from the old one, and that they showed him off in the new one, the
Mhm.
with the new do.
Yeah, and I'm specifically so excited. I think I mentioned this last week when we briefly touched on it, but it's like getting, Bethesda is one of those studios for me. Obviously, I'm a big fan of their games, but they are like a rock star in that they are slowly becoming like a once per generation kind of studio where like they don't
Sure.
put out a lot of games. And, you know, we just got Starfield, so it was like, they're starting Elder Scrolls 6, but this is like essentially a brand new like Bethesda game just dropping out of the blue, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting that like we'll be able to hop into this and experience something new. And even though it is, an old, style Oblivion game, you briefly touched on it, but like, the prospects of my treasured Fallout 3 getting the same treatment, it's just like the mind can only wander so much when, stuff like this. Like I'm definitely going to be paying very close attention to some of the specific improvements that are made in this game to kind of even just like gauge and daydream what that future game might look like.
Yeah. And so this Oblivion remaster is considered the complete Oblivion. So they also announced that it has everything, all the downloadable content from the 2009 Game of the Year edition, which includes the Shivering Isles and Knights of the Nine story expansions, additional downloadable content that include Fighter's Stronghold, Spell Tomes, Vile Lair, Maroon's Razor, the Thieves' Den, the Wizard's Tower, the Orrery, what the fuck, and Horse Pack Armor. And kind of go back to the point that I was saying earlier, though. I think that if they announce all this, right? They have the showcase. It's 20 minutes, and you're like, okay, cool. This is actually like they're selling me on this game, this remaster. And then at the end of it, if that ending actually did work, and it was like, oh, when are they going to release this thing? And they go, oh, like today. And like that wasn't like, oh, damn, yeah, dude, no shit. Like it would have been so much more impactful. But I mean, everyone knew. It was like, I mean, at this point, I think it might have actually gotten, not for me, but I think it might have actually for the general population gotten to a point where it's like, all right, dude, just drop it at this point. Because, the rumors were like, it's dropping today, it's dropping tomorrow. It's constantly, it was constantly changing. And so to finally have it out, it is nice. And it has obviously just, I will say, been taking everyone by storm. I think it has over 100,000 concurrent players on Steam right now, and that's just Steam. So not including Game Pass, which is available on day one, not including the PlayStation 5, which is again, it's also on the PS5 to purchase.
Yeah, and even earlier, I was watching a video from Juicehead, who's a pretty prominent Bethesda YouTuber. Even at that point, earlier in the day, concurrents were up to like 150,000. So like it's definitely doing at least pretty well for the shadow drop nature of it. And this was also kind of weirdly enough like a thing that's been pointed to in interviews from Todd Howard in the past, where he's like, I really like the release or like the reveal to release to be as short as possible, or as short as people will let me, was essentially the quote. And again, Starfield was kind of a divergence from that. There was, a couple of different factors that resulted in that. But again, to your point, like if there were leaks and leak culture, like kind of rumbling around this, like you don't get any closer than reveal and release the same day. And I, even still, with all the leaks and everything like that, I still struggle to think of a game of this scale being shadow dropped. Like, sure, it's a remaster of an old game, but like this is like as far as remasters go, this seems like it's a pretty big remaster like effort, and I can't recall another time where like a big AAA kind of team dropped a game like this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Outside of like, a Call of Duty might be dropping a season or something like that, like randomly.
I mean, I heard Legend of the Highborn dropped right after the reveal, Nick. I don't know. No, I agree. It is a huge one, and I believe speaking of, this is also a literal huge game. I believe it's 120 gigs total. Kind of everything said and done. Again, some people are like, well, how could it be this long? But I do think it's a case of there's so much work done here. And that maybe they, if anything, they went maybe a little overboard, without the like the first game had so much, or the original had kind of all these restrictions, and now they're like unfettered, like we can do whatever the hell we want to make this thing look and play as smoothly as we want.
There's probably more
And so,
polygons in like a slab of concrete than an entire town in the original. Like
100%, yeah, and it really does look stunning at times, and they do a good job of. It's not even like hey, here's an old screenshot and here's a new one. They do like they swipe over halfway, let you take it in for a second, and then they swipe over the rest of the way. I think that was a nice touch as well. For me, obviously now we've established the game is $50, $49.99 on Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam. Obviously, you can also play it immediately on Game Pass at no extra cost as long as you have Ultimate or PC. But Nick, you actually going to be jumping into this thing? I mean, I know it's kind of been on both of our backlogs, but is this enough for you to hop in right away, or?
I really want to. As a Bethesda fan, trust me, I really want to. I definitely am going to be playing this at some point. The thing that wins out over my fan of Bethesda side of my brain is my fan of physical media and I want the game on my shelf side of my brain. And it seems like the game is getting a physical release. It's a bit odd because none of that information has seemingly been out. They do show at the end of the trailer like the deluxe edition kind of thing, and I think that is a physical version that they're selling, but it didn't really have like specific platforms for that. And it didn't have like pre-order links or anything like that. So I'm kind of expecting a Metroid Prime Remastered situation where, like, digitally it's available now and everything, but maybe in about a month or two is when retailers get physical versions. So I'm going to maybe bide my time until I can get like a physical thing to throw on my shelf because I just prefer that. I know it's also kind of a weird toss-up right now, the state of the physicality of the Xbox Game Studios games. Like, apparently the PS5 version of Indiana Jones isn't like the full game on the disc kind of situation. It's like a key to download digital version. So they might be doing some of that shenanigans. Honestly, like, I pick my battles where I can, and that part of the physical collecting doesn't really faze me all that much. I'm perfectly content with just having an official release on my shelf kind of a thing. But yeah, that is what's going to push me over the edge specifically, is if I can grab a physical copy of it. I really, there are certain games that I will break that trend for. Alan Wake 2 was one. But to this point, I don't have a physical copy of Alan Wake 2 because I don't want to justify it after I bought the digital version for $70 or whatever. So that's kind of the thing I want to avoid. Like, I don't want to get a digital version and then double dip on a physical for Oblivion, even if I think it looks amazing. I also don't really want to resub my Game Pass subscription right now. So I'm probably waiting for a physical specifically.
No, I'm in the same boat because I'm in the same boat for two reasons. One, obviously the same as yours. I really want to play this thing, but I also really want to make sure I have a copy of it on my shelf, and specifically for the PS5, just because that's what I primarily collect. I say that the last physical game I bought is actually for the Xbox. I just bought House of Ashes, so maybe I'll play that eventually. But I want to own it physically, and I hope we get something soon. Again, I see that it's the regular edition's 50, the deluxe edition is 60, so kind of a normal a normal price back in my day for a full feature release. I would imagine that at this rate, maybe $70 for the full release. But again, I don't want to double dip, and I also really want trophies for this thing. When I'm playing it, I want to make sure. I've also seen whispers of people saying who've gotten to it early, saying that it's an easy platinum as well. So, oh man, I mean, we'll see. But at the same time, along with that reason of waiting for the physical release, some of it a little bit too much reminded me of Avowed, and not in a great way. Like it just kind of really, I don't know. I don't want the Oblivion to be tainted from my experience with Avowed, because
Hmm.
while I didn't hate Avowed or anything, you can read my full review over on respawnstation.com. I definitely don't think it was like a sweet taste, and yeah, so I definitely wanted to hold out a little bit longer before I get to it, which I think is actually totally fine, because I feel like at this rate, I mean, there was definitely, I think, a strong point where I was like, should I just download it anyway on the Xbox? I mean, I have Game Pass, might as well just see what happens. But I did not. I held off, and I think that was a good thing, because if I started Oblivion now, I think it would have definitely gotten in my way of getting to the Doom games in May.
Sure.
Even if it's just one Doom game, I just think that Oblivion would have derailed me entirely. So at this rate, I'm kind of, Doom. I think will be my next kind of big game that I start, and we'll see how it pairs up with everything else kind of in the release schedule, as
Yeah,
always.
I'm really starting to get concerned that 2025 is starting to shape up like another 2023. And Oblivion really doesn't help that, because it's like I'm just thinking it's like, okay, well, we got Oblivion now. I'm looking forward to Tony Hawk. I'm looking forward to Elden Ring
Death
Night
Stranding
Rain.
2.
Um, Death Stranding,
Oh
that's
yeah.
one that like I'm excited for, but I know I'm probably
Are you
not
are
buying
you
that at
are you
launch.
picking up Night Rain?
I think so.
I am. I've confirmed I will be picking up Night Rain.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get it. I also want to get Doom, GTA, obviously, Mafia. It's like we're just like hitting this point again where it's like every month it's something
So
that I
many
have
games.
interest in, and I don't have the time
Yeah.
or money really to get and play everything. So,
Well, I'm going to ask this question mainly because I actually played through the entirety of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim on my Nintendo Switch, Nick. And I'm curious, do you think this Oblivion's ever going to make its way to the Switch too? I mean, they have not announced it. Nothing's been confirmed. I'm just
mhm. um, I could see it later down the line for sure. Like you mentioned, there's no like logos or anything for Switch 2. If I had to guess, it's possibly that either Virtuous or Bethesda didn't actually have a Switch 2 dev kit like early enough, because
Yeah.
that's apparently been a thing where it's like Nintendo was extremely selective with which companies got dev kits this time around. So
Uh-huh.
I would be surprised. I think, or no, it was I read it. Bethesda put out a tweet today with like a little statement being like, thanks for all the support over the years, and they mentioned that they started this in 2021. So I definitely don't think that they would have had like a dev kit or anything, and probably if they do have one now, it's probably pretty late in the game to get a Switch 2 port ready. So I do think, though, I don't see anything in this game that screams that it wouldn't be possible to run on Switch 2. I mean, freaking Cyberpunk is running on Switch 2. So,
Yeah. Now, one other kind of way to look at this that I think was a little interesting is that for a long time there was this fan project that was being released, or kind of being worked on, called Skyblivion.
mhm.
Now, Skyblivion is right from their website, just so I don't kind of get anything wrong, because I know about it, but it's only always been from afar. So, Skyblivion is a volunteer-based project by the TES Renewal Modding Group, and their aim is to bring the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion to a new generation of gamers and reintroduce it to longtime fans of the series. So they're currently in the process of porting and rebuilding Cyrodiil, which is the world, or the map that Oblivion takes place in, along with all its quests, locations, and characters in Skyrim Special Edition. And this has been obviously an interesting kind of point, because then what happens with Skyblivion now that this remaster is coming out? And so they actually put out a little statement. I don't know if you
Mhm.
saw this, Nick, but
Yeah.
they've essentially, I'll kind of read a little bit of it, not entirely. So say, we want to emphasize that there is no need for comparisons or a sense of competition between Skyblivion and a potential official remaster. This was right before they kind of officially, you know, the news was officially announced.
Hmm.
Both projects can exist and thrive together, offering unique experiences for players. Sky Oblivion is a labor of love built by a dedicated community for the community, offering a distinct way to revisit Oblivion within the familiar framework of the creation engine. Similarly, an official remaster will undoubtedly bring us with its own set of advancements with the full funding of a development studio. We see this not as a conflict, but as a fantastic opportunity for Elder Scrolls fans to have even more ways to enjoy the classic world of Cyrodiil. There's much more there that they kind of mention, but it's good to see that they're still kind of chugging along with this thing, and also they shared a little earlier today. Huge thanks to our friends at Bethesda Studios for their continued support of Sky Oblivion. As massive fans, we're beyond thrilled for the generous gift of Oblivion remastered keys for the entire modding team. So
Nice.
they gave the new game to everyone that's working on the old one to port it over. So I thought that was a nice kind of, again, I don't want to keep this conversation coming back to constantly Nintendo, but again, Nintendo, they smell this thing happening. They're like, give us your money.
Hmm.
And so it is nice that a main kind of a big studio is like, hey, this fan volunteer based kind of fan movement, I think deserves its own space, and I think recognizing that there's enough space in the market to where that's a good thing and not maybe like as negative or as devastating to the impact of the brand value or whatever,
Hmm. Yeah,
as maybe other people think.
Bethesda honestly is the poster child, I think, for studios that really appreciate the strength that modders bring to their projects and the longevity that it affords those games, to the point that I think other companies, follow suit with like CD Projekt Red and stuff. I think they specifically probably looked at Bethesda when introducing things like their new mod tools for Cyberpunk and Witcher 3 whenever those came out. And
Yep.
both kind of follow a similar thing of like, hiring modders to work on projects and everything like that. So I think it's definitely a show of goodwill. And I think it's really cool that they have been highlighting Sky Oblivion a bit more, because a weird thing that people were talking about when Fallout London came out was that it seemed like Bethesda was just like not really paying that mod any attention or whatever. So I think maybe they took some of that like criticism that people had and, are actually doing the things like you mentioned with the Sky Oblivion team. But yeah, I never really saw it as going to be much of a conflict. I think in its nature of being a remake mod project for Skyrim, Sky Oblivion was always going to be, in the grand scheme of things, a more niche, way to experience that. Like, not only
Yeah.
do you have to have the hardcore Skyrim people, but you have to have the hardcore Skyrim people that mod their games and everything, which again is
Yep.
a non insignificant amount of people. But like,
Yeah.
I think that having the remake here, it shouldn't really affect in either way, negatively or positively. Well, I would say positively it would affect in exactly how they're saying, where it's like, you can see two different takes on the remake effort and
Sure.
see where the technology differs. But
Yeah. And I will also kind of I kind of to touch on maybe what Nick was said earlier about how Bethesda is that kind of generational developer where they're like every console generation they release one big game. I don't necessarily think that they're quite as big as obviously a Rockstar yet,
mhm.
but I have to imagine that a shadow drop of a game like Oblivion, and again we've talked about the numbers already, is quite a significant impact on the kind of general player base. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. That game's coming out this week, and it's also going to be on Xbox Game Pass. And so I feel like this is definitely a game that maybe people have. There's some impact with. I think maybe some people who would have jumped in immediately to this are now going to be stuck in Cyrodiil for a little bit before they
Mhm.
get around to this one. And then also not maybe quite as of a direct kind of comparison, but I saw earlier a Raw Fury, or I believe tweeting out that they had Post Trauma actually released today. um, on consoles and PC. And if you don't know about Post Trauma, it's a puzzle horror game that's kind of inspired by like PS2 games, and it looks very interesting. If you have interest in a puzzle horror survival horror game, I recommend checking it out. This one's from Red Soul Games and Raw Fury. Again, a big surprise. Like, oh, nothing's. It seemed like it was a okay landing zone, and all of a sudden, Oblivion comes out. So
Hmm.
yeah, check out those games. Don't let them fly under your radar if you have any interest.
Yeah, for sure. Like I do think that the Oblivion factor is gonna have an impact. I would like to hope that Expedition 33 is strong enough in its, presentation, and it's different enough in its gameplay that there might not be that overlap and that people will still check that game out. But it's definitely good that, we shot those games out and be like, yeah, please, like, don't just immediately get sucked into Oblivion and forget that these games are coming out here.
Yeah, absolutely. But well, with that said, that brings us to the end of the show. Nick, anything else about Oblivion you want to talk about?
Uh, I specifically can't wait to hop in and give it a try. And I know we just got Oblivion literally today, but man, if I'm not excited for 2 to 3 years from now, if I see a Fallout 3 logo and we're getting a remake, I mean that's I
Oh
I've
boy,
as a person that's watched
dude,
gaming stuff on YouTube for such a long time, and you see these legendary reactions of people getting remakes of their favorite games of all time, Ocarina of Time is my number one, and I honestly have a hard time believing that will ever get like a remake. That's like almost like in that untouchable range where it's like
I agree.
I don't think
Yeah.
Nintendo even wants to mess with it really. Um, but like that's going to be a legendary pop off for me if I see Fallout 3 at a press conference getting a remake.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's why we got to get you in front of a camera every time there's a Nintendo event. You never know. I mean, it's unlikely, but you never know.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
I will end this on sort of a segment that we have not done in a while. Nick, you know what it is. It's like this, try that. And because this is the first time I think we've done it since maybe the first episode. I think we tried it at the end of the first episode. If not, let me just reintroduce it real fast.
Hmm.
It's just as the segment title goes. If you like this, then we recommend you try that. It's a suggestion based show or segment to kind of get you to explore different things. And the rule is, I know this is a gaming podcast, and I will say, to our credit, compared to a lot of other gaming podcasts, we actually stay on topic. We rarely delve outside of the gaming news and stuff.
Hmm.
And so this is our opportunity. If we can recommend a game or something that's not a game, as long as either the thing that we're recommending or the thing that we are kind of saying you should, isn't recommended of, has to be a video game. One of the two. I
Hmm.
feel like I explained that well enough. Nick, do you have any, or do you want me to start?
You go ahead and start. I'll need a second
Okay.
to come up
Okay.
with one.
So, there, look, I got to be honest. This was a little bit of a. I knew I wanted to talk about this, but I just didn't know how, and so I'll kind of quickly say that if not necessarily that if you like one thing that you'll like the other, but which I know is the whole point of the show, but uh, if you like Mafia 3, I would recommend that you watch Sinners. And
Hmm.
it's not necessarily a one for one because Sinners is a genre film as well in a different way. But I think one thing that is the reason why I specifically recommend it is because I got home and there's a part of me that was just like, oh man, like there's something about it that reminded me of like it's this old America. It's life as an African American in old America, which I actually think Mafia 3 specifically does a pretty good job of kind of introducing you to. And it is a different time period. I believe like 1916, I think, is Sinners, somewhere around there. Whereas I believe it's in the 1960s is when Mafia 3 takes place. So it's not
Hmm.
the same time period. And it's also not the same genre because again, Sinners is a genre horror film that is kind of has its own statements and tendencies. But I really appreciate what both of these things, even though Mafia 3 maybe gets a little overshadowed by like the talk of like, the technical problems or whatever. What they're trying to say and how they say it, I think is very interesting. And Sinners specifically is an an awesome film. I watched it opening night. Actually, the day after we shot the last episode of the podcast, and I watched it in IMAX, and it was just this. It was a stunning experience, kind of seeing it on that big screen with that kind of format. It was quite it was just an incredible experience. And there's again, you've probably heard about it if you go on social media, but there is one sequence in this film that is this celebration of like kind of music history, and it is just it is the way they shoot it, and to think that they also, not just the way they shoot it in terms of physically moving through the space, but to do it with like an IMAX camera is probably an undertaking. Sinners, 100% recommend checking it out.
Nice. I had a weird angle that I was going to take mine on, but I think it makes zero sense for me to really make that angle. So recently I've been watching...
If you like Pikmin, try Hyrule Warriors 3.
Not quite to that level.
Okay.
I recently been watching season 2 of The Last of Us, which has been airing on HBO. And initially I was going to be like, if you're one of those people that, is just hopping into the TV show, it's like, why don't you give the game a try? And kind of like how we were just talking about with Oblivion, you can see where the video game diverges from the TV show and vice versa and stuff like that. But then I was just sitting here thinking, and I was like, you know what? Who's listening to a gaming podcast that doesn't play video games?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think that really works. So instead, I'll just say, if you like The Last of Us, how about trying something like Left 4 Dead? Left 4 Dead, I think, is a game that I return to every once in a while with friends. And, Valve games have a certain... I think developers don't really like this, but they have a certain magic to them. And Left 4 Dead is one of those ones where it's like, people will always think of like Half-Life or Portal and stuff like that. But Left 4 Dead also offers such a unique kind of gameplay experience and vibe to the zombie kind of genre that I think is just it's so fun, and it doesn't take itself seriously, but it takes itself seriously enough that it's not like just like, this weird kind of like, it's not Zombieland, right? But it's it just has this vibe. And recently I was just thinking about Left 4 Dead, and while watching Last of Us, there's a sequence that kind of very specifically reminded me of Left 4 Dead in season 2, and obviously a lot of people are going through some motions that the gamers have experienced a couple years ago, especially with the most recent episodes.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
I'd say give Left 4 Dead a check.
Nick, I wonder if there's a version of this segment or it would be a different variation of this segment, right? Where every episode, every time we do it, we both come to the table with our own kind of like this, then try that. Mm-hmm. I wonder how it would play out if we both came to this like, okay, if you like this, and then that is the same for both of us, and then we recommend different things based off of that initial item. I think that would be interesting too, because then
that would be good.
Like if we both had one prompt, where would we go in our recommendations?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be an interesting thing. Maybe we'll try that out next time. But with that said, Nick, I don't have anything else to say. You can take us out.
If you enjoyed what you saw or listened to here, definitely give us some ratings, like and a subscribe. We can definitely always use that. Comment down below, say, if you're hyped for Oblivion, or if Bethesda is just the worst, most vile company to ever grace your eyeballs, like many people usually do anyway. So, but yeah, do all of that stuff. And if you enjoyed, or I already said that. I'm botching it, Streak. God, I gotta get out of here.
He's throwing.
Have a good morning, a good night, and a damn good time.